they've been on Metro, they'd be here already. So we do have a quorum now, and we can get started. We're going to start with the oath of office for our new board member, Kim and Dan.
Do you solemnly swear that you will, as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Southwest Ohio Regional Transit Authority, support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that you will honestly, faithfully, and impartially perform the duties of your office, that you will not be personally interested, directly or indirectly, in any contract let by SORTA, that you will not violate or knowingly permit to be violated any of the statutes of this state covering the operation of a transit authority, and that you will perform the duties of your office to the best of your abilities, so help you God. Thank you.
All right. And for those concerned, Dan will be able to vote appropriately, as he sat through the 6 hours of committee meetings last week. So thank you and welcome, and we're thrilled to have you involved, and know you're going to continue to help us do great things. So thank you. There were no hearings from citizens, or no one signed in to comment. Anybody have any comments? What I would add is I received a couple letters from riders concerned about on time and missing trips. We'll continue to investigate and work hard on this. Obviously, a lot of different components go into that. I know the team's been doing great work to continue to try to do the best we can there. Hiring continues to be a big part of it as well. And so, as we always say, if you know anyone that's looking for a good job, for good pay, and a great mission, please let them know and bring them in. Okay? Thank you. First order of business is the approval of board minutes from December 13th. They're in your packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to read and review them. I would move approval thereof. Looking for a second. Thank you, Heidi, for seconding. Okay. Oh, did I skip something?
No.
Motion probably moved and seconded. I got interrupted there for just 1 second. All in favor say aye, right? Aye. All opposed say right. Okay. I skipped over the CEO Star Award in my haste to keep us on time. So please do not take that as a lack of importance of these awards, and we appreciate all the hard work everyone's doing.
As I always say, this is the best part of my job. We have some really, really, really amazing people that work here at Metro that serve the community. And today I get to recognize a few of them. I'd like to ask Erica Beinke to stand if she would. Erica was a Queensgate operator. She has since been promoted to a training specialist. And as we look to really improve the operators and make sure that they're customer friendly and they understand what they provide to the community, Erica was in a really, really tense situation. There was a police matter, and Erica literally got up out of her seat to protect everyone on her bus in a very dangerous situation. And we want to recognize Erica today for being an absolutely outstanding operator and congratulate her on her recent promotion. I'd like to ask her to come up and join me. Chris, did you want to say something?
I just want to say, I've been in this business about 20 years, all in operation. Textbook. That was probably the top couple, 2 or 3 I've seen have been part of how she handled and de-escalated the situation. But it was truly professional. We are a better organization because of her. She's in the right place right now, trying to steal our operation as a supervisor. But to train our men and women on how to operate a bus safely. It's a great person, very well.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Getting all this fancy stuff we put on the wall.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Not always an easy job.
Next, I'd like to ask Mary Huller to stand, if she will. Mary Huller runs our grants department. And as the board has experienced last year, almost every month we were awarded a grant. And for the year, we were awarded over $100 million in grants. Mary and her team are absolutely outstanding, and I just want to say how much we really appreciate the hard work that you do. If you'll come up and join us. Larry or Andy, if you guys would like to say anything.
Sure. I'll say a couple words. When we think about what's happened in the last 3 years with COVID and the federal government's response, that response said that public transportation was an essential service. So what they did is they created coronavirus relief funding programs, passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We hear about these things in the newspaper, but it takes somebody like Mary to turn that policy into action and into funds that we can actually use. Very difficult process to go from Capitol Hill to the street. Mary's an expert at it. Without her, we wouldn't be here. So appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'd just like to echo Mary's contributions. Fantastic job. Appreciate your leadership and looking forward to all the new things that you're doing.
Thank you. Heartfelt thank you. Yeah, it's a partnership. Yeah. Can you see it? There you go. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And last but not least, I'd like to ask Tara Walker to stand. She did a presentation at the Planning and Ops meeting. We've really focused on our inclusion in our procurement department. We have gone from spending $72,000 in 2019 to over $4 million in 2022. We set a goal for ourselves of 20% of our spend for small disadvantaged businesses. Last year, we reached 26%, which is absolutely amazing. So congratulations, Tara. Why don't you come up and join us? John, would you like to say something?
Tara's just a tremendous example of the success that any one person can have for themselves and for their organization when they're dedicated to the craft, when they care about the community, when they care about their effort, and when they're absolutely above common when it comes to their professionalism and their profession. Thank you, Tara.
Congratulations. Okay, thanks, and congratulations to all the recipients. I think, we have so much good stuff happening, and it's fun to, to kind of sit here as a board and take credit for things sometimes. But we know there's tremendous folks that are making it happen every day. Our operators are out there making the world safer for the community, and we appreciate that. We know those are not easy jobs, and so thank you. The funding we're getting, that we're going to be able to do great things. We talk about it every day. BRT and such is amazing. And then obviously, we've talked about the diversity spending. To go from 17,000, I think it was a couple years ago, to 4.3 million is really remarkable. So many great things, and we don't take enough time probably to say thank you to all the folks at Metro that make it happen. So thanks to everyone, and particularly to the 3 recipients. Thanks. All right, we had a finance committee meeting last week. Rod's not here to be able to talk about it, but we normally went through the financials, which I think we'll cover later today, and the investment of funds reports, which we continue to have lots and lots of good news there, which is really great. The team's doing a fantastic job as we work through, and we know the books are properly closed and managed as we go through some of the audit things. We're making great progress there. So, really good work by everyone. One action item was the approval of resolution authorizing the CEO and general manager or CFO to execute payments on the Ohio Transit Risk Pool Shock Loss Fund on behalf of SORTA at a cost not to exceed $950,000 for 2023. This is really part of coverage for our general liability and kind of overruns, right? I don't know, Larry, if you have any comments you want to make, or we got it covered. Okay, so this was really put on the consent agenda. Usually we have multiple things to go on the consent agenda, so it's always kind of funny when you only have one. But I would motion that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any questions?
Ms. Burdine?
Yes.
Ms. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Rehouse?
Yes.
Mr. Cassie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson? Yes. Ms. Sheets? Yes. Ms. Taylor? Yes.
Okay, thanks. We also had an infrastructure bike and right-of-way committee. Heidi?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just noticing that like boys are on one side and girls are on the other today, so. Except for you lovely ladies. But I was like, wait a minute. Okay.
That's true, we're even doing it.
Yeah, we've got like the board member split going on. Good morning, everybody. We had a great infrastructure bike row committee meeting last week. There are two consent agenda items from that committee. The first is a proposed resolution around the contracts for the 2023, for the second, I'm just going to say the second round, thank you, of funding. And so those are just to kind of get those done so that they can be sent out. The second is a resolution around the application guidelines for the third round of funding. So that's, would you add anything? Okay, great. So that's what we've got for you, and I'll make a motion that we approve both of those resolutions.
Anyone want to second that? Second. All right, thank you, Sonia. Properly moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? No?
Ms. Taylor? Yes. Ms. Sheets? Yes. Ms. Robinson? Yes. Mr. Cassie?
Yes.
Mr. Treehouse?
Yes.
Ms. Burdine? Yes. Ms. Black?
Yes. And just want to say kudos to all of the staff involved in this work. It's really incredible work. So thank you for doing that.
It really is an exciting, right? I think we have 29 communities that have gotten funding over the first 2 years, some number like that, across the county, and lots of great things happening in the community. We hope we continue to refine the process, as Heidi talked about, and make it better and better so that more folks get to enjoy that spending. And we hope we're changing some of the timings to hopefully let folks use this to leverage more money from the state and the federal government. So good news there. Anything else from the committee? No? All right. We had a series of things for the consent agenda from the planning and ops. Blake can't be here today, but he wanted me to tell you all hello. So we have a series of things for the consent agenda and then one item that I wanted to do separately, right? So first was the a contract amendment for bus shelters, putting everything we're doing with Adsposure together into one place. Includes primarily some actual purchase of kiosks that were obtained years ago as part of the streetcar, but now getting kind of good use for them so that we can drive forward. Next one, intergovernment agreement with DAP at the University of Cincinnati to help us with design work for shelters and other things, bus stops. So we continue to look at that. So great work. We've had great success working with the students and the faculty there. Expanding a Verizon contract for the Wi-Fi in our vehicles. You know that our vehicles all now have Wi-Fi and charging stations. All right. Good news. That's been a great and exciting add to what we offer. And then architectural engineering services around perimeter control for the Queensgate garage. We know that that site is not as sort of secure as we would like it to be, and that several agencies around the country have had problems with people getting into their shelter or getting into their facilities and sometimes taking parts off buses and things like that. So that's a contract to make sure we have better control there. And I can't remember if this is the last one or not, but the sole sort. This is for the cleaning services of Government Square. You know, we don't own that, but it's our major downtown transit center, and so this is to make sure that we continue to keep that clean, working with the city to make it a nice experience for riders and future riders alike. Okay. Yeah.
Are we, I guess I'm asking, how did the verse is with CDC in terms of they subcontract?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't believe so.
Sonia, would you know anything?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know if 3CDC subcontracts or is it their employees?
That's all their employees.
If they're employed, they're employed directly by them.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask that question later.
Right. Okay. So that was everything on the consent agenda. I was going to make a motion to approve. Seconded. Now, any comments, questions, anybody? Or anything we want to pull off? And that's fine. No, it's hard to keep it all straight. That's right. That's right. And you know, we know it's an important partnership for us, and we want to continue to make that work, but never at the expense of the broader objectives of the organization. So, any comments on any of those things that were put on the consent agenda? Chanel, why don't we?
Mr. Kasim?
Yes.
Ms. Bernard?
Yes.
Ms. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Dreehouse?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Sheep? Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have the?
This is the discussion item.
This is A&E for all of the projects we've got for the next 2 years. If you guys wanted to have a separate conversation, we simply then list of projects out to the board.
Oh, did we get was the list? Okay, I apologize, I missed that. But this is we have a lot of this was approval for architectural engineering work for a variety of capital projects that was kind of done at a high level, and so we wanted to get a little more explanation and be able to discuss it here. John, can you give a quick overview of this so we can make sure everybody's comfortable with what we're talking about and not risking any funds?
Good morning. So the request is for approval of a task order contract with Elevar Design Incorporated for architectural and engineering services over the next 2 years to handle a variety of small-scale renovations and repairs to our Queensgate, Bond Hill, and Access facilities. That's the list of projects right there that are all included on our 2-year capital plan. The projects at the top of the list are all of the tasks that we will engage the vendor for architectural and engineering design work immediately upon execution of the contract. The bottom half of the list are all of the projects over the remainder of the 2 years that are teed up and ready to go, and that at some point in time during that 2-year period, we expect to engage that vendor for architectural engineering services. The total value of the estimated engineering cost for all of that work is $1.6 million.
Right. So not the construction of the projects, just the design.
Just the design. All of the construction work for each one of those individual projects will have to be competed under separate contract.
And I think some of the discussion was, we know there's broader changes coming to these locations, and so was there concern that we'd be spending money that then would maybe not?
Sure.
Right.
What we did was we took the opportunity to kind of color code each individual project in a stoplight pattern to let you know what the critical needs are, what the urgent needs are, and then what those general needs are, still a need, however. It's worth noting that all of those projects that you see in yellow basically have 1 foot in the red and 1 foot in the yellow. They're just on the verge of becoming critical need projects. As a reminder, this facility is roughly 70 years old. We've done very little work to it since we've occupied that facility. A lot of this is critical to keeping the facility in a state of good repair, and some of this work is needed in order to facilitate larger projects at some other point in time down the road.
Right. And we know any major changes are several years away.
That's correct.
In any event, and these are the things that are required. And to your point, John, that we know for years when we didn't have any resources, we didn't take care of our facilities like we should have. These were owned by the city at the time. So there's a whole bunch of things. So now that we own them and can take care of them and have the resources to do so, we believe we should. We just want to make sure that we're not throwing money away in case the buildings get replaced in 5 years. So hopefully this list makes sense. Obviously, the largest thing on here is around the HVAC at Queensgate, which is more than half the cost. But I want everyone to know what was on these lists so we could feel comfortable with what we're approving. But with that, I would go ahead and recommend approval of this resolution. Oh, question. Fine. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the committee meeting, so could you, I'm just like, that number for Queensgate, $115,000.
It's replacing the entire HVAC system.
Actually, for the,
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, ma'am.
sorry.
No, that 915 is design work.
That's just the design work.
So that feel like you're if it I don't know at $500 an hour, it seems like a lot of
Well,
design work. Yeah.
Number one, it's a large facility. Number two, it's a replacement of the entire system. So it's not just necessarily the unit that sits on top of the facility. It's a big, gigantic unit. It requires a lot of technical engineering work to make sure that, number one, the roof is sound and structural can handle it, but also interior, once we get into the ductwork and the controls and all of that other stuff. A lot of technical work needs to go into that design. Again, just a cost estimate. Obviously, we're going to try to negotiate away from that number, but that, as a rule of thumb, when we estimate the cost of the entire project, the engineering usually comes in as a percentage of that cost.
Right.
Okay, thank you. It does seem high to me, but
Yep.
thank you. Glad to know you'll
That's why we
continue
brought
to
up the list.
negotiate.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Trent had a question. Yeah.
Irrigation line item, is that what it sounds like, sprinkler systems, things like that?
For project details, any deeper than what you see there, I'm actually going to try to defer to John Ravazio. He's
Which item? The irrigation?
Yeah, Bond Hill project, yes, Bond Hill's, the way it sits there and runoff a lot when we get heavy storms, water pools in the parking lot like it would leave.
Okay, so it's like stormwater mitigation, not like putting in a sprinkler system.
Exactly.
correct.
Yes.
Gwen. Yep.
Second question. The HVAC system that are being engineered, designed, do they contain the new need to, remove the air, circulate the air, or do something with the air because of COVID?
That's a little deeper than my expertise can answer, and that's something that we can talk with the engineers about.
I think you should, because all the new buildings now, they're taking that into consideration.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I think we got to know, so we'll get, before that was executed, right, the $6 million, that would come back as a request to us, so we'd have the design, but I think it's worthwhile
Right.
to say, sure that's
Yes,
happening.
and the conversations about the design itself, we can bring that element up during the conversation.
Yeah, so we're only approving the right column, not the left column.
That's correct.
But I agree, and it might be worthwhile to get some of the details. The $915,000, I was trying to do hourly rates and charges, I think it seems awfully high, but,
Just one more comment.
Yep.
I mean, kind of on-
you can have more than one.
Okay.
That's what we're here for.
There are a lot of federal funds available for upgrading buildings or energy efficiency, and I don't know if Mary is following along with some of those grant opportunities, but, just hope that any future infrastructure.
We will absolutely be going for federal grants
Okay.
for the construction and replacement of HVAC, and we expect to be awarded some grants for a lot of the projects on here.
Great, just wanted
Gotta
to make sure
get
that was
the
on the
design
radar.
done.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and appreciate the details. I think it's important, right? These are large funds. We want to be careful with them. So,
Yes, sir.
but with that, I would. Did I already move in second? I can't remember where we were. All right, we have 2 seconds. We have a second and a third. Okay, that's what I thought so too.
Ms. Bernard,
Yes.
Ms. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Dreehouse,
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Cassie,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Ms. Sheets, and Ms. Taylor.
Okay, we have a this is time for the walk-in item, right? So I'm going to let Khaled talk to this one a little bit, but this is related to, if you remember, we've been working with the city to let them use some of our land on the Wasson Way to make sure that bike path continues to get developed. So I will let Khaled talk about what this request is.
Thank you. As Greg said, SORTA has been working with the city of Cincinnati and great parts of Hamilton County for a while now on transitioning a section of our right-of-way, rail right-of-way, to that purpose of the Watson Way, which is a much bigger project for biking, pedestrian, and so on. And the portion that we currently own as part of the rail right-of-way falls, in the middle of that planned Watson Way. We are in agreement that providing that easement to the city of Cincinnati would help accomplish that bigger project, the Watson Way bike and pedestrian path. It will also help us tie, create kind of like a multimodal system there. It's not just biking, pedestrian, but also connected to the bus stops in that vicinity as well. So the recommendation of the staff is to move on with go ahead with the easement to the city. It's just short of a mile long. It's abandoned rail right of way. There are no tracks on that segment, and that's the recommendation.
And this goes with our strategy of really creating a multimodal community. So you can walk, you can bike, you can catch a bus, you can drive. This furthers that agenda.
So this isn't giving away property, it's allowing the bike path to go over property that we're not using for any other purpose today.
Correct.
I'd hoped we'd have a map in here. Could you describe exactly where this mile is? I think that'd be useful for folks.
Yeah, it's right on the western edge of I-71 between Dana and Fredonia. So I think there's a map at the end of that.
Okay, and we had reviewed the going into these discussions months ago as a board. So just thought it would be important to come back and say we're going to finalize it now that we're ready to do so, and the support for the multimodal use of these properties in the city is in our best interest. So,
and to that point, it does provide that connection for 83,000 residents in that area to the jobs, the college, shopping, and other activities as well.
Yeah, there is kind of a map at the end. I don't know if it helps people or not. If you,
but it is between Dana and Fredonia, right on the western edge of I-71.
Yeah. Fredonia always makes you sound like it's a made-up country from the Marx Brothers movie, but in any event. So I think no cost to us here, just allowing the easement so that the city can put the bike path there and finish Watson Way. I would move that we approve.
Second.
Allison seconds. Properly moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? No? Get those bikes out.
Thank you.
It's a voice.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say right. Okay. Let's keep moving then. That's right. The other item that, for briefing purposes, we went through in pretty great detail the selection of the BRT, proposed BRT routes to start with, corridors to start with. So thought it would be important. This is a big deal, right? Potentially spending tens of millions of dollars of sort of money and, hundreds of millions of dollars of money in total on bus rapid transit. So I thought it'd be worthwhile to give another briefing at this session. We'll go a little quicker than we did in the other meeting because a lot of folks have heard it. But please, this is a big deal and really big part of reinventing Metro, right, to introduce new and better types of transit for the community. So ask questions and make sure you understand as we go along.
Thank you again. Yes, so this is really a major project for SORTA and the community as well. Just to put things in context before I turn it over to our consultants, back in May 2020, the residents of Hamilton County passed Issue 7, providing sales tax to SORTA so we can improve our transit system. And SORTA immediately start working on the implementation of reinventing Metro. And 1 year later, we did make improvements on the fixed route network. We added service, frequencies, Sunday service when some routes never had Sunday service. And then a year later, towards the end of last year, we added another batch of improvements, and there's still more to come on the regular service. And really, the proof is in the pudding that our ridership is one of the highest, if not the highest, ridership in the country in terms of ridership recovery. We are close to 85% of pre-COVID and we're still charging fare. Some of these routes that received some of these improvements, like 24-hour service, weekend service, are actually more than our pre-COVID ridership at 114%, 134%, and some are even higher than that. But we didn't want to neglect other areas because fixed route regular service cannot meet the needs of every community or every neighborhood because some streets are tight, big buses cannot negotiate certain areas, or there may not be enough demand to justify a regular service. So we looked into Metro Now, which is mobility on demand. We completed a study. We're in the middle of implementing 2 zones of Metro Now service coming early May. It was supposed to be earlier, but we have issues with receiving vehicles. But May 1st, 2 zones will receive Metro Now, which is kind of like an Uber-type service run by the agency. That's going to serve these areas where we don't have sufficient regular service available. But again, we continue working on other improvements as well in the paratransit area, but also the BRT. The BRT is a major project that's going to help tie all of these different services together, whether it's the regular service, the mobility on demand, or what we're calling Metro Now, paratransit, and so on. We did, put out an RFP. We hired a great team, a national team, led by WSP and another 4 great subcontractors or consultants with them. And last week, we made the announcement of which 2 corridors of the 4 will receive BRT. The other 2 corridors, Glenway and Montgomery, will receive enhanced service, meaning not only service, but shelters, some infrastructure improvements, sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, and so on, in hopes that that will bring them up and improve ridership on these, so that in a few years, they will also receive BRT service as well. I'm going to turn it over to our consultant, Tim Reynolds from WSP. I told him, you only have about 20, 25 minutes, so we're going to hold him to that. Tim?
You're reading into my time here. But anyway, we very much appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, Tim Reynolds with WSP. Mimi Razor with Razor Communications will be talking about the outreach in a few minutes. Why don't we advance the slide? We just kind of want to discuss what we've been doing and where we're moving ahead at this point. As Khaled was describing, we started off from the Reinventing Metro plan, the 4 corridors in the next slide. And our task was to do the analysis, very thorough analysis, shown here in terms of all of the various tasks that we've been working on, and the ones with check marks are the ones that we've completed. The ones with the arrows are the ones that we're undertaking to complete this BRT study this spring. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over for a few minutes to Mimi Razor. We've conducted a lot of outreach activities, which she'll review and go over some of our survey results. Mimi?
Thanks, Tim, and thank you so much for having us here today. As Tim said, this has been an amazing process, and we're excited to be a part of this. This is a great service for the greater Cincinnati region, and the feedback we got from the public shows that they're ready for it and really excited for it to be implemented. So I'm just going to hit the highlights on the extensive outreach initiative that we took over the past 4 or 5 months or so. We started in September. And we launched a project website, and we worked in conjunction with Brandy's team to conduct social media about the initiative. We basically drove everybody to the website in order to be able to take an online survey. We conducted media relations and information. We produced informational materials. Basically, then we went out to the communities, and we went out in a big, bold way. And we actually took printed surveys with us as well to get feedback from the communities when we were there in person. And I'll walk through a little bit of that. So we did, over the course of the public involvement period, we did 6 public meetings. 4 were in person along the corridors. And then we did 2 virtual meetings. You can see all of the meeting handout that we had there. We had a QR code people could scan to take the survey. We did extensive signage, and we had places where people could come in and do Post-it notes on maps and tell us all of their things that they were hoping for and issues that they we're hoping BRT could help solve. In addition, we sort of took a road show out to the community. We went to community events and we did pop-up meetings. We were in coffee shops. We went to events like the East Hill Jingle and Mingle and the Quarryville Peace Ball Tournament and Car Free Day on the square. We had over 70 people come and talk to us. So lots of different places that automatically had people, people from the communities out. And we took the show to them and got their feedback and input. In addition, we also engaged with Metro staff because who better for us to talk to than people who are interacting with riders every day and could give us feedback on things that they were hearing from people firsthand on what they were desiring in BRT. So we had more than 300 employees take our survey, and they're also very excited for BRT to be implemented. Now I'll walk through a little bit on the survey results. So the first thing we wanted to understand is who we're talking to in terms of Metro ridership. The big takeaway from this question, where we asked how often do you ride Metro, 52% of the people who participated in the survey, and we had nearly 1,500 responses, do not ride Metro. They either said, only once in a while, I don't ride Metro, but I'd like to in the future, or I don't ride at all. So we had a good mix of people who are both frequent riders as well as those who are not. Then we asked why you ride Metro. Again, just looking at the highlights, the takeaway from this response is that 35% were using Metro for recreation or to visit friends. About 29% were running errands or going to appointments, and 25% commuting to school or work. So keeping that in mind, commuting to school and work requires being on time, right? So you'll see as we get to our next result, what's most important to people. When riding Metro, the thing that came out as most important, 64% said reducing travel time is most important. So anytime you have a 5-point survey where you're asking people to rate something from not that important to very important, when 64% pick your top end, that's a big deal. So that's a huge note to us. Very important and somewhat important, more than 90% saying reducing travel time. Then we asked which features interest you the most about BRT. Coming in at the top 3, frequent service, dedicated bus lanes, and smart traffic signals. All, again, things that signal to the public a more efficient and faster service. Then we said, will these features encourage you to use BRT? Again, on that 5-point scale, 60% saying definitely, and up to close to 90% saying likely or definitely. So all good signs for BRT. Then we asked about comfort and convenience features that interested them the most. The top 3, real-time arrival info, enhanced bus stations, and Wi-Fi. Just helps the project team understand what's most important for us to implement first. And will these features encourage you to use BRT? Again, about 87% saying definitely or probably. So then we asked which of these corridors interest you the most. Keep in mind that we were out in the communities, so these are the raw surveys that we got back from people both online and in person. 32% said Hamilton Avenue, followed by Montgomery Road, 30%, 19% Reading, and 15% Glenway. Then we asked them, where do you live? Are you within walking distance of one of the 4 corridors? Well, these also follow in the same order of the preference of corridors. 32% living in Hamilton Avenue, Montgomery Road, followed by Reading and Glenway, and then 19% saying they don't live near a corridor. Then we asked where they live. You can see the breakdown here, but it basically tells us that we had a pretty broad distribution. With the exception of College Hill, Northside, Pleasant Ridge, we had a little bit higher participation rate from those communities. So very interested in Metro services. And then we asked, do you work on or within walking distance of one of the corridors? If yes, which one? Again, Hamilton Avenue, Montgomery Road coming out on top, but 42% don't work near any of the corridors. So that also tells us a story there too. Then when we asked where you work, not surprisingly, 31% downtown Cincinnati. Clifton, 13%. There were a few who were retired, so that was not applicable. And about 30% were write-in, meaning a broad base. Which destinations should be included along the first 2 BRT corridors? So in The story that this one tells us is downtown Cincinnati, of course, 31%, but then you have the Uptown District and University of Cincinnati making up 36%. So that Uptown District and that economic center, very important to the community. Then finally, we said, do you have access to a car or other personal vehicle? 63% yes, 13% sometimes. So 76% have access to a car. But if you'll recall back to that, definitely, and things that would encourage them to try BRT, there is a strong desire for this in the community and people excited to give it a try. So that was a whirlwind tour through public involvement. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I have a question.
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
Did you have anyone who self-identified as a person with a disability, whether because of age or because of physical condition or because of not being able to understand the system?
Yes, and I'd have to go back and look at how we surveyed that in the actual survey. But I know that we did have people come to the actual events, and I talked to a gentleman myself who was visually impaired, and he had a lot of questions about the tools that he uses, both online and in person, for using the Metro now. And so wanted to make sure that those types of services would still be available to him on BRT. We also had people who use wheelchair come to some public meetings as well.
All right.
So yeah, thank you. Good question.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Back to Tim.
Thank you.
One thing, I know we jumped into this real fast, and we've all been around a lot of it. Does everybody have a clear understanding what BRT is? I don't know if we defined it when we started, but I think everyone does. I just want to, we have some new folks, Dan, but you know.
Yeah, and a consultant will be a jargon-focused type of person, so bear with us, and if you have any questions, if we throw that type of thing out, like bus rapid transit BRT, we will clarify it for you. Just before we move to the goals and the metrics in terms of the evaluation process for what we call step one, outreach we've taken very seriously, as does SORTA staff. To the extent where we brought in two firms to design and conduct the effort, Razor as well as C. Robinson. For goals and metrics, our subcontractor is Nelson Nygaard, who's worked for SORTA previously, I believe, on the bus stop optimization project a couple of years ago. But we had the outreach side and then the technical side, which I want to go over for a few minutes here. Next slide, please. And so, what we started off with our stakeholder advisory committee, which we did set up at the outset, and we've had 5 meetings, the last one last Tuesday, to come up with, so what are our goals and objectives for the project, which you can see here, essentially increase ridership, improve the speed. A lot of these things kind of tie into some of the survey results that Mimi was describing. Equitable access to transit services. Can this thing, how will it fit in the built-in street environment that we have here in Cincinnati, as well as finally to support economic development. So these sort of set the stage for the technical data points that we dove into to help us get to the point where we could say, yes, these 2 corridors would be the best ones for SORTA to advance. So again, in a summary, very data-driven, very metrics-oriented. We used qualitative ratings, but we did apply numbers to them. You have to score these to kind of get to the end result. Next slide. And we'll move on. So, I mentioned a technical analysis. This is sort of a little montage of some of the data points, metrics that we looked at and did a very thorough analysis. You can see the list obviously on the left. And what I'm going to do is that we've had a lot, but the interest of time, I'm going to focus in on, next slide please, 3 of the major indicators, as we call them. One of which is looking at origin destination patterns. This is kind of, what does this mean, all these thick and thin lines? But we used from a firm called Replica, but this is really very up-to-date cell phone data, which gives us origin and destination pattern. So in other words, this is using state-of-the-art technology. So it's not just using, say, the OKI regional travel survey, but actually gives us a very detailed sense of where people, within each of the 4 initial corridors, people are traveling to and from, and what's the volume of that travel. And you can see the middle 2, which is the Hamilton corridor and the Reading corridor, you have a very strong travel market, particularly between downtown, uptown, Cincinnati State, and into Avondale. You have a little bit on West 8th Street in the Glenway corridor, and then it kind of is sporadic up on the Montgomery Road corridor. But it does tell us, not only what the trip patterns are, the frequency, but also, what the trip lengths are. So we found on Glenway, there tends to be more short trips, whereas on, say, the Montgomery and the Reading corridors, that the trips will be a little bit longer, say, from downtown to the uptown area. Next. We looked at activity centers, high schools, colleges, shopping centers, senior centers, all of those type of things to figure out, where and these are located, which corridors have the majority or the lion's share of these facilities, which serve as transit trip and potentially BRT transit trip generators. Next. Equity is very important in the consideration for any transit agency, any public agency, to make sure that an investment of this scale, which is a big improvement in service, is equitably provided throughout our region. The darker the color would be areas that would have what I would describe as more equity-focused neighborhoods. We looked at minority, zero-car household, income, and a number of other variables which indicate where communities of equity importance would be located. And what we found was that, for instance, there's a perception that, the Glenway corridor, very equity-focused, very low income, so on and so forth. To an extent, true, but we also found that there were many equity-focused neighborhoods on Reading, on Hamilton, to a lesser extent on Montgomery Road. Glenway is somewhat close to, but does not directly serve a lot of the equity-focused neighborhoods on the west side, which tend to be north, heading down, up toward Queen City, Harrison, westward northern Montana, and such. So this provided us some really good information in terms of these corridors, what's sort of the bang for the buck in terms of applying service to equity-focused communities.
I think it's an important one. I don't want to let it slide. So what this does tell us, though, is we need to make sure that if it may not be a perfect fit for BRT, but there's some neighborhoods we have to make sure are getting good service. That area just west of the city does have a fair amount of daily service, but so much so that it wasn't thought about as an opportunity for Metro now. But we may want to keep putting these things together, so we're not. The nature of BRT and the nature of those neighborhoods don't fit perfectly well together the way the infrastructure is laid out today, but we know it needs to be a focus of how we serve those neighborhoods better going forward.
And one of the great byproducts of a study of this magnitude is that's a great example of that, that we get a lot of information to say, okay, either on the next project or on a different project, such as expansion of Metro Now, hey, this kind of is another indicator that perhaps is a direction that the agency would want to pursue over the course of the next few years. Another one of our indicators is how is ridership today along these corridors, existing ridership. So we looked at just the sheer number, but because the corridors vary in length, we wanted to sort of equalize them. So you see average riders per mile utilization, and again, Hamilton and Reading stood out from the crowd. Transit delay and reliability, we look at from a traffic point of view. Why don't we move on, because I know there's just a lot of information. The number of intermodal facilities, such as whether it's a transit center that exists or one that's planned, such as College Hill, or the Metro Now zones that are going to be rolled out in the next couple of years. And this is a map of the Metro Now zones. You can see that some of them touch 3 out of the 4 corridors. And we look at traffic congestion. Obviously the buses run within the context of our street network. So looking at where there is delay, where there's congestion, and next slide, where there are left turns, which, as we all know, when we get stuck there sometimes, that's a source of delay as well. That also helps us in the design phase to look at where signals can be improved and such. And we also look at, from at least a high level at this stage, in terms of what might some of the development possibilities be along the various corridors. Our firm subcontractor, NBBJ, will be taking a little bit more detailed look at the final 2 corridors on this score in terms of what is the potential for economic development because the BRT line is there. So we score them by each category, and then we sum them up, and you can see here that, again, Hamilton and Reading scored highest, and they also scored considerably higher than the other 2. And so next slide. So as a result, as Claude was describing, that the recommendation has been, and we're advancing the Hamilton and Reading corridors for BRT development as part of this study, and then looking at enhanced corridor improvements that I'll describe in a moment for the Glenway and the Montgomery corridors, with the idea that as Metro starts now with building a BRT network, that only 2 lines will eventually over time grow to 4 and perhaps more. So I won't go through all of the details because they're somewhat repetitive for each of the corridors. But when we mean BRT, what are we talking about? We're looking at as much bus priority as we can, given the nature of our street network and signal system. So that will be in strategic areas where there would be bus-only lanes, perhaps even running in the middle of the street where the right-of-way is sufficient. There will be some segments, such as here and there downtown, and running in mixed traffic. Signal priority, clearly. We have something called queue jumps, which is in conjunction with getting that signal to allow a bus, when it's just about to turn red, that the green is held, the bus can get through the intersection, doesn't have to sit there for, say, 2 or 3 minutes. When you do that up and down the corridor with this array of treatments, they add up to help significantly reduce travel time. We'll have significant stations. That's going to be a fun and interesting program in terms of the design over the next couple of years on what they're going to look like, how they will function. The platforms or the sidewalks will be level with the floor of the bus so that there are no ramps, no need for lifts, and so on. So everyone can walk, roll, stroll on with no problem at all. Fares will be prepaid, so you don't have to line up at the front door of the bus. All these techniques are what's designed to make it run faster, and for when it's stopped, for that time to be minimized as much as possible. Along all the corridors, we're going to be looking at pedestrian access improvements. It's one thing to be obviously fully accessible and high platform buses and high platform stations, low floor buses and such, but accessibility also means reaching out into the neighborhoods. So we'll be looking at how do we get to these stations a lot better, easily, more attractive to help maximize ridership and also to really serve as enhancements to the host neighborhoods. Next. And as one example of the enhanced corridor, we're looking at enhanced shelters, also pedestrian access improvements, signal priority and such. So we'll be looking those in concert with the continued development of the 2 BRT corridors. And I think we'll just move on. These more or less say the same. Again, it's a sampling of what's out there. We're going to be taking a much deeper dive in terms of the types of enhancements. And when Mimi comes back, that's one thing that we're going to be asking, in terms of stations, we have plotted some recommended station locations where we're taking those out to the public. What type of enhancements do you want to see? What level of service, frequency, what connections from the neighborhood, such as what we saw on the west side to maybe to Knowlton's Corner, to the North Side Transit Center and such. So when we look at what we're now starting, we're now in step 2, where we're doing what we describe as the 10% design process. Again, I mentioned we're looking at the alignments, the types of right-of-way, the street treatments, this lane, that lane, how it works with traffic and the traffic signals, as well as, I mentioned priority treatments. I talked about station spacing. These will be fairly widely spaced stations. I do want to note that the idea is not to replace, let's say, the Route 43 or the Route 17. We will be retaining what we call underlying local service, so that BRT is not 100% for everybody. It's a big deal for a lot of people, but we want to make sure that that lifeline of all-stop service, that people who may not be able to walk to or whatever to a station still has that local connection available. And I mentioned station design in terms of passenger amenities, connectivity, how do we get more of the metro network to and from the BRT lines? And we're developing an operating plan. How late will service run? Will it be 24-hour? How frequent will the buses run? I mentioned transit-oriented development, TOD, another piece of jargon there, but looking at a high level, what are some of the development opportunities? To help us in the community, yourselves and the public and our stakeholders, we'll be developing some visualizations. We're not all map-oriented in terms of what this all means, but when you can actually see in the context of a neighborhood what it would be to have, say, a bus-only lane or a signal priority or a queue jump treatment or a station, doing some visualizations goes a long way. I'm going to skip the one on the left for a second. I'll come back to it. We are developing ridership estimates. We're developing right now a financial model, and we'll be coming up with an estimate of capital and operating costs. All this leads to getting federal funds for this project, which is a competitive process. We believe right now we have very strong corridors here, that they will be very competitive, but we have to now begin the process of making sure that we check all the boxes with the Federal Transit Administration and enter what we call their project development process. So in the end, Our product is called a LPA, another one, but locally preferred alternative. That's what the Federal Transit Administration wants to see, which will have all the details moving forward so that it will be at the point where the feds say, you've given us sufficient information, a good argument for them to consider in terms of grant funding.
Yeah, I think two things there, right? One, to a certain extent, I told this to the BRT committee that like we're the easy part. You want great bus service that's perfect, and yes, I'd love that. Right now, we're getting to the part that says, okay, here's what it means, and here's what the impacts could be on your neighborhood, and all these kind of things. And so we expect some more interest as we get more specific, right? And so I think we need to make sure we're educating ourselves on that, right? So great opportunity, but it really starts to become real.
Yes.
I think the other thing, and maybe I don't know if you noticed it, we talked last week in the committee meetings about all the money that Larry's investing, right? Making whatever it is, $500,000 a month or something. That you remember a huge chunk of that is set aside to get these matching grants, right? So that money, even I think we have about $60 million of that is designed to get the money to do this. And this is even much more expensive than that $60 million. So those are tie all these different discussions together, right? Really critical. And I think we were told having the financing set up is almost like 50% of the scoring for these things, right? So it's
Sorta.
remarkable to be in that shape.
Exactly. You're in an advantageous position relative to many transit agencies out there, particularly those who are embarking on their first rapid transit project in the hunt for federal dollars. It's an extensive program. It's not automatic, but again, we want to make sure that you have, they want to say, can you operate? Are you going to have the funds to operate it? Do you have the funds to match? But also looking at, your land use policies, ridership, so on and so forth. And so it's our job to set the stage for making this project as competitive as possible with the feds. Yes.
I hope we are, I don't know the composition of the BRT committee, but I hope that we are engaging with the city and the county in these kind of discussions, because there's so many, for me, there's implications in this presentation in its first phases. Both the county and the city are talking about economic development, housing placement, what have you. And, we're talking transportation, how to get you through all of that. And somehow or other, Cincinnati is notorious about being disconnected. And so I would hope that we be the catalyst for connectivity. When you say that everyone is leaving, say, from north to downtown to work, then that tells me economic development is not happening along that line to the extent that they all had to go downtown to make it. And 90%, if they're coming from Avondale, they may be working in a hotel. So I'm saying, there's a lot of implications in just this report alone that we really need to be the catalyst to say, when you're looking for places to put your economic development and your new housing, look at what we see.
Yeah.
For those who didn't know, at the committee, I was getting all these calls from the west side about the bus not coming, and only to find out the bus line didn't go in their direction. So, we're learning a lot. This is really awareness time for all of us, but I would hope that we're publicly discussing this and allow these presentations to be presented in a public forum with those who are making these decisions.
Yeah.
The city and the county are both involved. They actually sit on one of the committees.
Is it the staff or is it the commissioner?
It's the staff.
See, that's where I'm at.
But it's also, I think, Daryl and team met with each council member
Yes.
individually to review the project.
Yes.
With each commissioner to review
Yes.
the project. So very much working to
Are we doing the each thing? Somehow or other, it's how we translate, the grapevine. And so I think that we need to be in one room. When you say locally preferred, I think we need to be in one room because the county's got these plans. They're going out here and the city's going over here. We really need, you're talking about putting out money before the plans are developed. well, you know, if we're putting out money before the plans are developed, and we look up and they're over here now, and we're going straight up the road, I think, you know, there's opportunity for us to work collectively so our dollars go further and our leverage with each other. I somehow I'm not hearing that discussion in that manner.
I guess the one question is,
Yeah.
are at the city level, I guess, in the county, are the departments of transportation and engineering talking to DCED on this? So Department of Community and Economic Development and DOTE. I assume you're talking to DOTE. Is DCED at the table also?
That's correct.
They are at the
Yes.
table. Okay.
And as we continue to, now that we're in step 2, we have our 2 corridors, that all those meetings and such with, you know, whether it's transportation or economic development or health or, you know, and on, you know, that's where everyone comes to the table. So, you know, we will have, from a public and stakeholder point of view, you know, we're going to be doing, you know, a second round of what we call extensive and intensive outreach, public as well as the various stakeholders out there. Because as Ms. Robinson was saying, you know, connectivity, connecting is really, you know, one of the key word there for this project. When people look at, you know, particularly from the public, the last big major transportation infrastructure in this region was really the interstate highways, which divided communities like crazy. And, you know, a lot of just, you know, negative results from that. But, you know, we might need to make sure that folks understand that this is not what that is, that this is an opportunity to connect folks, communities together, as well as connecting them to opportunities such as jobs and entertainment and medical services and social services and such. So that process will, and you'll see a timeline in a moment, but this is the beginning of a multi-year process that gets more extensive and intensive as it goes to get to that opening date.
And I think, you know, most of the folks, if you think about almost to the Issue 7 coalition, right? There was involved a lot of the folks who were talking, getting them more and more. And it's what's fascinating is you know, when you talk it conceptually, like I was saying, oh, we're going to have a really great bus line that's dedicated, you know, sounds good. Now we're starting to talk specifics, right?
Yeah.
This street, this style, this dedicated, that not dedicated, you know, so engaging in that is what really comes next, right? And as you put things on paper, you'll get more attention. But if there's folks that you think need to be part of the conversation and you're afraid they're not,
Right.
bring it up to this
That's
group.
my concern. You know, that, you know, a good example of sitting down and really talking about how we want to do something. And I was just a small player and used a small area. But if you know where my agency CAA is, and you look across the street and you see Woodward School, and you look at the architecture, we did some common stuff because we was all at the table. Walgreens is sitting on that corner because I put a clinic in my building. And the only thing I required of the clinic is not to dispense any medication, any prescription. So Walgreens said, hey, here's the opportunity. So they came in. So, I mean, it's how you put things together. Fifth Third Bank put their branch there. So I know, and then the bus goes right there. And now you got
BRT's going to go right there.
Getting ready to do that industrial. So you got everything working together. But this took us to work together for years. And so I understand that timing. But everybody was so comfortable because they were all in there in the beginning. They understood what the vision was about. And I'm hoping that that's where we can do this, because so often they ignore transportation, and the cities that are stronger are the ones that put emphasis on transportation.
Yeah. And I think engaging not just to the city of Cincinnati, but all the communities along the way and
Yeah.
everything. So very much so. And I think that's, we'll talk timeline here for a second, but that's the key to the next steps, right? Is engaging everybody that. But I would ask, right, if you know people, bring them in as opposed to saying, how nobody ever called them kind of thing. It doesn't work either.
But I think we have to lead, to your point, I think we have to lead that discussion though, and making sure that it's a well-facilitated discussion with these community partners, versus us kind of individually picking off and saying you should be a part of this
We got a
conversation.
chance to be the leaders. We're the one bringing in those
Exactly.
dollars. We got a chance to be the leader.
Well, I
Because
think-
how we look at, you know, the respective funding sources that all of these municipalities are going after as well is going to be really important in this, and that's how we're going to be able to leverage our dollars to help them to go. to
Yeah.
to go the farthest in those places, especially, throughout the county.
I was really glad to see the community development corporations called out in one of the maps, and just really happy to see that. I assume that means they are at the table or will be at the table, because often it's those people who are working at the neighborhood level who know very specific information about economic development, housing development, neighborhood dynamics, corners. Thanks for including them at that level.
And we're always looking for opportunities. We're getting out there as much as possible, as SORTA staff is getting out there as much as possible. And that kind of leads to, hey, we'd like you to attend such and such, North Side, Knowlton's Corner, there's an event later on in a couple of weeks. That just email came yesterday. So it's those type of things where, as we get the word out, that there will be more of that interaction as well, so that people are working together and not in silos. I'll just go through just briefly the outreach program, but in the next couple of months, 2 months really, we're going to be out there in the neighborhoods as we've been through step one. We'll be conducting what we call some design charrettes, where folks can come in, roll out the maps. We'll do this virtually as well. Here's where we think a station will be. What do you think? What do you want to see at these stations? Do you think this is an opportunity for development? What are your concerns? Because people are going, is this going to raise my property taxes? We have to look at it from that point of view. So it's going to be a very exciting, very busy, compact process, so that we can get to, again, delivering that locally preferred alternative in our report at the end of this, this spring. Next slide. So in terms of schedule, for the study itself, right now, January, you can see where we are today. We're going to be, taking it out to the public starting next month. We complete our 10% design in March and complete this stage of the study. So in the context of the overall development of the BRT network of those 2 quarters, next slide. So again, the first one, that's where we are right now in the blue. Following this, in the middle of, presumably, of 2023, SORTA will then initiate looking at more, design, preliminary engineering, definitely more detailed design work. And as was described here, the more you get into the details, the more you're going to hear, the more issues are, but that's just the nature of the process. With the idea that this is an ambitious but doable schedule, construction over the course of 25 through 27, and opening, say, the first line in 27, second line in 28. It is, as I mentioned, ambitious, it's doable. SORTA staff, we know, is very laser focused on this process, moving very quickly and efficiently. And we appreciate the opportunity to be serving SORTA on this great process, working with staff. And if you have any other questions, we're here to help. Thank you.
And I think one of the things, thank you, and this is such a key part of making our system a practical alternative for people, right, to get to where they're going. But because of that, it's community investment. We want the community to be supportive of it. And so we'll work on making sure as we get to each stage that the broader community and the folks affected along these lines have the opportunity to sign off and show their support as well.
Correct. All right. Thank you.
All right, Larry.
Good morning. Would like to give the trustees an idea of how we are currently viewing the month of December. Would like to preface my comments in that the results that you're going to see today are preliminary in nature. There are 2 components which accurately define the notion of preliminary. One, there are entries which can only be made in the context of period 13. Period 13 is accounting speak for entries that are only available to us after the year comes to its logical conclusion. The other variable which is in play is our audited financial statements. That process is underway with our external auditors. We expect to bring the final results to the board in the May cycle. And so as we push towards that time period, technically speaking, 2022 is not closed. And so adding those 2 things together, today we will characterize the results as preliminary. Looking at our first chart for the month, the revenue chart, a couple key takeaways here as we think about fair revenue, which for the quarter is actually up relative to the previous quarter. We've recast this chart from previous demonstrations with the board to a quarterly presentation as opposed to monthly. And so as we think about the key takeaway here, fare revenue is actually up for the fourth quarter, which does echo some of the previous comments around ridership and how that's playing out. And this is really, I think, a pretty strong statement to make when we think about some of the programming that took place in the fourth quarter to undergird community service. There were multiple free ride responses to weather and things of that nature, in addition to a couple of marketing programs that were specifically geared towards enhancing ridership. The other piece here, when we think about key takeaways, we'll look at the results for CPS. CPS comes in for the quarter at $1,168,000 in total. This is actually, again, up significantly from the previous quarter. Two components that are in play here. One, the third quarter is at 1.5 months of actual service based on the start of the school schedule. And then the fourth quarter actually has approximately 2.5 months. So you've got more days in the revenue calculation. That's one variable. And the other piece is we've seen how CPS has managed their service model. Since school started, there are actually more students that started to participate in utilizing the Metro service. So those two things combined contribute to the growth in revenue for CPS in the fourth quarter. Moving to the next chart, just a couple quick key takeaways here, primarily looking at wages, which represent about 70% of the agency's expense base, are relatively constant for the period. Everything else is tracking pretty nicely as well. Turning to the next page, looking at the profit and loss summary, this is kind of where we pull it all together. Total revenue for the month, again, on a preliminary basis, comes in at $19.7 million, which is favorable to budget $6.2 million, or approximately 46%. We'll get details on that in just a second. Total expense is approximately $12.4 million, which is also favorable to budget $1.1 million, or 8%. Cumulating those two things together, we end up with a December preliminary surplus of $7.2 million. And we note that ridership comes in at 770,000 for the month, which is favorable to budget 6,000 riders, or approximately 0.7%. Looking at the details that support our revenue favorability for the month, we're coming in, total fares are coming in unfavorable to budget, approximately $183,000, or 16.2%. We've got two drivers to that primarily. One, we did have several days around Christmas with sub-zero degree temperatures, and to the extent that there's any inclement weather, that certainly has a downward impact on actual ridership. And then again, as I alluded to earlier, there were several programs in the month of December which impacted free fares. There was a program specifically on the 22nd through the 25th where we did have free fares to respond to community needs. Another key driver in the revenue bucket revolves around our favorability with county sales tax, which continues to come in strong relative to budget. $1.5 million favorable variance, or 15.9%. Another revenue favorability component, state subsidies. We did have a grant for $1.8 million, which was favorable to budget. And that was driven by the Ohio Urban Transit Program grant. And then the last component to revenue favorability, which we've reported in previous time periods, revolves around the ARP grant, ARP competitive grant, or affectionately referred to as ARP2, $2.9 million, which is favorable to budget, and we know that was an unbudgeted item. And then as we contrast revenue with expenses for the month, wages and benefits essentially on plan with less than 1% variance. Fuel and lubricants, same comment, less than a 2% variance. We did see some unfavorability in parts and supplies relative to budget. Root cause there is the cost of revenue vehicle parts is up approximately $41,000 compared to budget. And then the last component, the all other bucket for the month is favorable to budget, approximately $1.1 million, which translates to 30.9%. Root cause there, as we reported previously, we are seeing favorability in the month for some of the planning and innovation expenses that were initially brought forth in the budget, and then timing really associated with a couple of programs in advertising and promotion which can be traced back to the implementation of Metro Now, which we know has been pushed to the Q2 time period. So that's really the detail behind the P&L for the month. If there's any specific questions, certainly we've got, I'll take those now. The detail, again, as we think about other line items, is on page 7 here, and I will certainly respond to any questions if there are any. Okay.
You know, all good news, right?
That's correct.
But the thing we know we have to be careful of, that we got to still take careful care of every single dollar. So
Yes.
thanks, Larry, and appreciate it. We have big plans, right?
No doubt.
In consideration of your time, I'll move through this relatively quickly. We have a video that we'd also like to share, the year in review. This year is our 50th year in service, so there will be a lot of activity around our 50th anniversary. Again, our ridership trends are up. We ended the year with 9.6 million trips taken on Metro. It's a 28% increase over last year. We were awarded a DIRG grant, which will help us green our fleet, $1.9 million in December. Our second round of TIF fundings, nearly $40 million, 36 projects and 26 municipalities awarded last month. And this year, between February 5th to 11th, we'll be celebrating Ohio Loves Transit Week. That is the Metro on the Move. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If none, we'll roll right into our year in review.
I think folks that know about local funding of things, TIF means something else sometimes, so we got to figure out a different name for that. But he meant the Transportation Infrastructure Fund.
Oh,
So
not the city?
Yes.
More service improvements with Reinventing Metro Phase 2. These included the launch of the all-new Route 5, connecting Oakley, Kenwood, Blue Ash, and Sharonville with more local service. We reimagined Route 67 as a new crosstown along Emperor Road. And 2022 saw the expansion of our holiday service, 4-week service in more neighborhood and simplified routes for easier trip planning. Thanks to Issue 7, in February, we celebrated the first ever round of transit infrastructure fund grants with a signing ceremony at
see the lights.
Contemporary Arts Center, where we heard from elected officials and transit leaders, including Senator Sherrod Brown and Acting Chairman Jeff Nelson. All told, we awarded $227 million in grants, including $205 million for the Western Hills Viaduct over the next 25 years. And finally, we installed 8 EV chargers at the North Side, Glenway, and Oakley Transit Centers, saving more than 217 gallons of gas and 4,200 pounds of CO2 emissions in Q2 alone. When gas prices spiked in the spring, we had a unique chance to provide promotions to introduce new riders to our service. As a result, we saw record ridership levels in late March, reaching numbers we haven't seen since before COVID. It was so successful, in fact, that we made summer weekends fare-free to show off our new and improved weekend service, and we saw big jumps in new riders giving us a try. Thanks to the tireless efforts by Metro staff, we provided over 150,000 rides during the 4-day Blink Festival. Whether to work, school, or play, Metro is the way to go. Our business outreach expanded as well, seeing a 5,000% increase in contracts with DPE businesses, reaching $4.2 million in contracts this year. And we were happy to reinvent our partnership with UC and Cincinnati State by moving our Easy Ride promotion to the Transit app. If it was happening in Hamilton County, we were there. We also took time to recognize the hard work and dedication of our amazing operators, maintenance workers, and staff. We made history in January by reaching a new deal with the ATU, bringing better pay, benefits, and schedules to our union workers than any time in Metro history. In April, we celebrated the first ever Golden Bus Awards banquet, recognizing dozens of individuals for their commitment to our organization. Then in July, we welcomed 2 new 2 million milers into the club and celebrated dozens of others for their commitment to safety every day. 2022 did see some challenges, including the continued driver shortage. This called for us to get creative and more aggressive than ever with recruitment. Equipped to offer better pay, benefits, and schedules than any time in Metro history, monthly job fairs at Queensgate culminated in an operator hiring extravaganza at the Forest Park parking ride in October. All this hard work didn't go unnoticed. We're proud to say Metro was recognized by the Public Relations Society of America with 3 Black Smith Awards and 3 Diamond Awards. CEO Daryl Haley won numerous accolades this year, including both Copto and Opta prestigious leadership awards and the Cincinnati PRSA CEO Communicator of the Year award. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's truly a lot to celebrate. That's why this year we saw the return of our State of the Metro banquet, where we could tout our accomplishments and hear from more leaders, this time including Senator Brown again, APTA President Paul Skatilis, and FTA Region 5 Administrator Kelly Brookins. Most importantly though, our customers noticed too.
I love doing improvements to Metro. I can ride the bus all night long, I can charge my phone at the same time.
All in all, we're thrilled to report we've returned to roughly 80% of our pre-pandemic ridership, outpacing the national average among U.S. transit agencies. In September, we saw the highest monthly ridership system-wide since before the pandemic began, and in November, we hit 40,000 daily riders for the first time since COVID. And we're not done yet. 2022 saw preparation for multiple exciting projects just over the horizon. We spent the year designing and developing our new on-demand service Metro Now, which is scheduled to launch. We convened Greater Cincinnati's first ever regional paratransit study to better coordinate services for people with disabilities across agencies. And finally, we're proud to say, in 2022, Metro won roughly $120 million in grant funding toward modernizing our facilities and our fleet with new, low, and zero-emission vehicles and infrastructure. Long story short, it's been a great year, but
You ain't seen nothing yet.
It's kind of exciting when you take a look back and see all the things that are happening and all the impact we're making. So thank you to the staff, as I said before, and thank you to the board. I know sometimes it can feel like a thankless task, and but it's important what we're doing and having a big impact. So, and thank you, Daryl and team.
Thank you to the board and to the staff. We've got some really exciting days ahead of us.
We do. Okay, governance and nominating committee, Heidi, that's you.
That's a hard act to follow. Who was it? Allison, Gwen, and I met last week as the nominating committee. And so what we would like to present to you is just a report out of that conversation. But basically what we were tasked to do was to identify and nominate a chair and a co-chair to lead the board this year. Do I share who we nominate and then open it? Okay, sorry, I'm looking at so we would like to nominate Craig for another year as chair and Allison for another year as the vice chair. But I also would like to open it up to any further nominations. I'm a teacher, so I can do wait time, but I'm not going to.
We could nominate you.
There you go. Yeah, experience does nothing but get in the way. That's right.
Okay. So I'm going to declare that the nominations are closed. And then I think I just need to I will make the motion. Oh, I'm stealing Craig's job.
Well, it's odd, right? So I guess, so I then say the nominations and we vote. Is that how it works? Okay. So I guess.
One quick clarifying.
Yep.
We vote for Craig and then Allison, or can we vote for them as a package deal?
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
We can do them together.
Okay. I will only do what Chanel wants.
Okay. We have a roll call vote on the nominations then. Is that correct?
Yes, so we need a motion and a second.
Okay. Is there a motion? You made a motion, I guess, right? Okay, anyone want to second a motion for Alice and I to stay on? Okay, thank you. So now we roll call.
Yes.
Do we vote?
I think the meeting was quite contentious.
I would think.
Very
I would
contentious.
think.
Okay, Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Sheets, Ms. Robinson, Mr. Cassie,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Dreehouse,
Yes.
Ms. Clark, Ms. Black,
Yes.
and Ms. Verdon.
Yes, but I want to clarify that my vote is primarily for Craig.
And vice versa, right? So, thank you, right? And thank you, Allison. Look, this is not meant to be a permanent thing, and I do worry sometimes that I get overly involved in it. That's not meant to shut anybody else out. So please reach out, get involved, right? There's so much we have to do here. We just talked about this BRT work. That's going to take an awful lot of community engagement. Hopefully everyone's feeling supportive of it and what we can do, but it's going to take all of us to deliver. The access work, right? That I think isn't getting as much attention externally, but that's a huge impact, right? Tying all the paratransit work together in the community. Metro Now, which kind of just slips in, it's massive impact and wonderful, right? We really are making a system that we should be proud of and the community can really thrive with. So look forward to that, but I'm going to ask everyone to really, really contribute because we got a lot of work to do. So thank you very much. Okay. Well, thank you. That's awesome. 30 minutes over. We should plan it that way, I guess. Any other new business? What I will introduce is because, not knowing what was going to happen here, we'll put together proposed committee assignments and things, and we can review those in February as a group. Fair enough? Okay?
That's what I was going to ask you about the committee assignments, but I want to ask that at one meeting, I'm not sure which committee, that we look at our brand, is it Metro or is it SORTA?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I know staff can talk about it, but, let's think about it, because if someone asked me, if I said I'm going to my SORTA board meeting, what is that? Then I say Metro, oh.
Yeah, right.
Then they know right away. So just sometime this spring, sometime this year, maybe we could talk about our brand.
For sure, and I think that may come up as well as we talk about different regional initiatives. We want to have a co-branding with some of the other agencies.
Sure.
And things like that, so probably a perfect time to talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Go Bengals. That's right.